What if one of these beings was created not to live, but to serve, and one day, she decided to change her fate? What does it mean to be truly free when your past was never your own? Can someone who was made to be a weapon choose their own path? Today, we unravel the story of Aurora, a creation born from the shadows of the Dominion, battling not just for survival, but for the right to choose her future. Join us as we explore her journey of self-discovery, the mysteries she uncovers, and the choices that will determine her destiny. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more incredible stories that will leave you questioning the unknown. And leave a comment below. What do you think? Is freedom something we can choose, or is it just another illusion? Let's find out together. Now, let's get into today's galactic conundrum. Out beyond the fringes of mapped space, where the stars feel more like memories than lights, the driftwake floated in silence. It was more relic than ship, a rusted freighter patched together with forgotten tech and the stubbornness of its owner. Inside, everything smelled like solder, stale air, and things that had once burned but never fully died. Arlen Cade sat in a dim glow of a half-dead console, sipping cold synth coffee from a battered tin cup. His ship groaned around him like an old animal, restless in its sleep. He liked the quiet. Needed it. The silence didn't ask questions. That peace ended with a single sound. A low, rhythmic hum began outside, at first barely there, then rising in pressure, vibrating through the ship's floor like the approach of something ancient. Without warning, a black Concordance dropship cut across the sky. No comms. No clearance. Just authority, cold and absolute. Arlen watched it descend from the cockpit window, eyes narrowed. Concordance didn't come this far out, not unless something was wrong. He stood, one hand brushing the taped grip of a revolver stashed under the console. The landing was surgical. The ship's ramp hissed open, spilling steam and shadow. From the mist stepped a figure in ceremonial armor, sleek obsidian plates etched with bioluminescent glyphs. In his wake floated a hover sled, and on it something that stopped Arlen cold. It was a pod. Cracked along the seams, edges scorched. Inside, suspended in a flickering amber gel, was a woman. Or something close. Her skin shimmered deep violet, veined with cybernetic lattices. Her limbs twitched sporadically, nerve lines sparking at random. Long, black hair floated around her like ink in water. Her face was peaceful, but not alive. Not asleep. More like paused. The envoy spoke, voice devoid of warmth. You rendered unsanctioned aid to one of ours. High Command hasn't forgotten. In recognition, we grant you this. He gestured at the pod. She's been decommissioned. Neural degradation. Useless to us now. You may scrap her. Or keep her. For company. For sport. We no longer care. Arlen's jaw tightened. He didn't move. Didn't speak. You don't have to accept, the envoy added, stepping back. But you're already responsible. Then, just like that, the dropship was gone. It lifted into the sky before the ramp had fully retracted, vanishing into the black without so much as a signature trace. Silence returned, heavy and uncertain. Arlen stood alone in the bay, staring at the pod. At her. A thin surgical scar ran down the side of her temple, too clean for battle. This was done in a lab. Someone opened her up, rewired her, and tossed her out like a defective drone. She wasn't a person to them. Just a failed project. But to Arlen, she looked too much like someone he once couldn't save. He remembered the blood. His sister's breath faltering on a docking bay floor. Concordance boots walking past like she was nothing. He hadn't moved fast enough then. This time, he did. He stepped forward, pressed the emergency override, and watched the gel begin to drain. The pod hissed open with a slow exhale, and the broken girl inside collapsed softly onto the padded floor. Arlen crouched next to her, eyes scanning the mess of wires, bruises, and fractured cybernetics. "She's not dead," he muttered. "Not yet." And maybe this time, he wouldn't let death decide. Aurora came back to life in pieces. Not like flipping a switch, but like surfacing from deep water, slow, disoriented, and far too aware of her own body. She didn't know how long she'd been under. Time in stasis didn't pass like it did for the rest of the universe. It pressed itself flat, like sound behind glass. And now that the seal had broken, her senses returned one by one, flickering like faulty circuits. There was no command voice in her head. No neural pings. No system update. No synthetic override signal. Just the hum of an old ship's life support. A soft golden light. An real air touching her face. That was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. She opened her eyes, barely. The light was warm, not clinical. The walls weren't white, they were dull gray, patched with mismatched steel plates and hand-soldered seams. She was lying on some kind of soft padding. Someone had even covered her with a blanket. Her limbs twitched. Reflexes misfired. The biomechanical implants along her spine sparked once, then settled. Her fingers curled slowly, jerking against her will. Pain rolled through her chest, sharp, but distant, like it belonged to someone else. She tried to sit up. Her joints screamed. Muscles and metal argued about ownership. She managed a half lift, then collapsed again, panting. Then footsteps. Measured. Human. The door hissed open. She didn't know what she expected: a tech, a handler, a Dominion soldier, but the man who entered didn't fit. He looked like he hadn't shaved in a few days. Worn boots. Burn scar on his left wrist. Oil stains on his sleeves. He carried a metal cup and stopped a few feet from her. He didn't speak right away. Didn't ask her name. didn't call her unit. Instead, he crouched slowly and set the cup on the floor between them. "Water," he said. "Room temp. Didn't know what your body could handle." His voice was rough, but calm. No command behind it. She stared at him, still waiting for the pain to mean something else, for punishment to follow. But it didn't. "I'm not here to hurt you," he added. Still nothing from her. Just ragged breathing. "Who are you?" she asked finally, voice hoarse and grainy. "Arlen," he said. "Just Arlen." She took him in. Late 30s, probably. Face lined, but alert. Hands rough from work, not violence. He didn't carry himself like a soldier. More like someone used to fixing broken things. She looked around again, still unsure if this was real. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because they threw you away." That hit harder than she expected. "I was supposed to be erased," she muttered. He nodded. "They said you were defective. Gave you to me like a broken tool and called it gratitude." Her gaze dropped to her own hands, one trembling, the other covered in faded weld scars. She remembered the cold gel, the restraints, the sensation of her own mind being overridden. She remembered nothing else. Just silence. She reached for the cup. Her fingers shook, but she held on. The water inside didn't smell like chemicals. It wasn't ration synth fluid. It was just water. She drank it. Not because she was thirsty, but because it was hers to choose. Something had changed. Aurora had been awake for hours, maybe more. Time moved strangely in this place, slow and uneven, like light refracting through thick, distorted glass. Her body was still weak, her movements rigid, but her mind was stirring. It started with a sound. Not from outside, but within, soft, delicate, like the gentle pluck of strings echoing in a hallway long abandoned. A guitar. She didn't know how she knew it. But it was familiar. Not data. Not programming. A memory. Warm, imperfect, entirely human. She was sitting up now, back against the wall of the Driftwake's spare room, her breath shallow but stable. She stared at the wall, though she wasn't really seeing it. Her eyes were looking inward into places that had long been sealed shut. Then came the words. Not spoken aloud, but embedded somewhere deep in her damaged neural array. Omicron Core 47. 3 words. A phrase. A code. It repeated, whispered in her own voice, laced with distortion, as though it had traveled across lifetimes to reach her again. Arlen noticed something was off. He entered the room quietly, hands smudged with grease, a small diagnostic pad under his arm. He was about to ask how she was doing, but stopped mid-step when he saw her expression. Something wrong? He asked, careful not to spook her. She blinked, like surfacing from water. I remembered something. He set the pad down and crouched next to her. Tell me. A sound. Music. And a phrase Omicron Core 47. Arlen frowned. That wasn't something a standard unit would dream up. He picked up the diagnostic reader and gently pressed it to the interface node at the base of her neck. The screen flickered, spat static. Then spiked. She's broadcasting, he muttered under his breath. Aurora turned sharply. What? He showed her the readout. Low-frequency signals masked beneath surface-level protocols. A hidden transmission, dormant but active. Sending out something that didn't match any known Dominion codes. It's embedded under your primary neural bridge, he said. It's not normal telemetry. It's something else. Like a beacon hiding inside your spine. Her stomach twisted. Not from fear but from the sudden, suffocating realization that something inside her had always been reaching out. Without her consent. Without her knowledge. For how long, she asked. No way to know. Could have been looping since before you landed here. She looked down at her hands again. They were hers, weren't they? But how much of her had ever really belonged to her? Arlen leaned against the wall beside her. You ever hear that code before? Omicron Core 47. She shook her head slowly. Only now. But it feels embedded. Like it was waiting for something. Arlen didn't speak. His mind was already working, piecing things together off-grid prototype, neural complexity beyond military-grade AI, buried signals. This wasn't just a soldier who'd been decommissioned. This was something experimental. Someone designed you to be more than a weapon, he said finally. That code, it might be a key. Maybe to who made you. Maybe to what they were trying to hide. Aurora closed her eyes. That guitar again. A hallway. Blue lights. Glass walls. And a figure, faceless but familiar, strumming softly in the dark. I wasn't just built, she whispered. I was changed. Arlen said nothing. But in the back of his mind, he already knew whatever she was, whatever had been done to her, the Dominion didn't just erase her because she failed. They erased her because she remembered. And somewhere out there, someone might be listening. Still waiting for her to wake up. Aurora couldn't shake the thought. I'm just a broken tool. The words echoed in her mind like an old command. A label that Dominion had branded her with, and it stuck tight, suffocating. She had been made to fight, to kill, to serve. Not to live. Not to be human. Sitting in the dim corner of the ship's storage room turned quarters, her hands trembled as she looked down at them. They were mechanical, but they were hers, weren't they? The cold, metallic fingers weren't quite human, not anymore, but they were still part of her. The lines of circuit board underneath her skin didn't feel like technology, they felt like chains, holding her to a past she couldn't escape. She looked up at the wall, her breath shallow. Arlen had been quiet for hours, giving her space. He didn't push her, didn't rush her recovery. He sat in the corner of the room, working on some tools, glancing over at her now and then. It wasn't pity in his eyes, though more like a quiet understanding, like he had been where she was. But he didn't understand her. Not fully. No one did. The silence stretched out. She could hear her own heartbeat. Each thump felt heavy, like it was trying to remind her she was alive. Maybe for the first time in a long time, she was alive. But the question lingered, was she a person or just a weapon that had failed? Then something shifted. A small, barely noticeable movement. Her legs. She hadn't even planned it. They just moved. At first, it was just a twitch. But then, with a sharp, sudden pain, she pushed herself up. She stumbled, her knees giving out, but somehow, she managed to straighten her back. The sensation was strange pain, but also a kind of power. She wasn't sure if she could stand, but she was standing. The ground felt solid beneath her feet, even if her balance didn't. She took a step forward. A slow, clumsy step. The pain shot through her body, her knee joint didn't respond right, and her leg buckled beneath her. But she caught herself, barely, her hand pressed flat against the cool metal wall. And then, another step. The second step was shaky, but it was a step. A real step. She was moving. Slowly, but moving. Arlen had been watching from the corner, but when he saw her, he stood up, taking slow, deliberate steps toward her. He didn't say anything at first. He just watched her, his face unreadable. She glanced up at him. For the first time since she had woken up, she didn't feel like a machine. She felt like she could be something else. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low, almost unsure. Aurora didn't answer right away. She just stared at the floor, her hands still shaking as she reached out to steady herself. She took a deep breath, as if trying to center herself. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I don't know if I can be more than this." Arlen took a cautious step forward but didn't crowd her. "You can be. You are more than that. You're not a tool. Not anymore." She turned her gaze up to meet his eyes. His words cut through the fog in her mind, like the first rays of light breaking through clouds. "I was made to kill," she said, her voice trembling. "To be an instrument of war. I was made for them." Arlen shook his head, his eyes steady, never leaving hers. "No. You were made to be alive. You just have to remember that." She inhaled deeply. The weight of his words settled on her shoulders. Could she really let go of everything she had been trained to believe? Could she be something else, someone else, after everything they had done to her? Aurora hesitated. Then, with a shaky breath, she took another step. It was slow. It hurt. But it was real. Arlen stayed where he was, watching her, no longer as a mechanic fixing a broken machine, but as a man watching another human try to find her way back from the edge. And when she looked up at him again, a flicker of something new crossed her face, something that hadn't been there before. A glimmer of hope. The room felt quieter now. Not empty, but full of something else. Something uncertain but promising. Aurora stood, still swaying a little, but upright. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just a failure. She wasn't just a tool. She was something else entirely. Something that could choose her path. A ping. Short. Sharp. It cut through the stillness, like a needle stabbing into the silence of the ship. Aurora's body jerked with it, a low hum vibrating deep within her. She felt it first in her spine, then in her head, like a sudden echo from somewhere far away. Another ping. It wasn't just an alert. It was something more. A signal, yes, but also a command. Something buried deep in her neural interface, buried in her mind, now waking up. It felt like it had been dormant for years, waiting, but now it was active. Alive. She froze. That wasn't normal. The ping wasn't just noise. It was a message, and it was for someone or something. And that something was her. Arlen looked up from his diagnostic pad, eyes narrowing as the signal appeared on the screen. His fingers flew across the console, trying to make sense of the data coming in. A flurry of numbers, a sudden spike in frequency. What the hell? Arlen muttered under his breath. He tapped a few more commands into the console, but the screen flickered, and the numbers just kept coming. Aurora's gaze locked onto his. She could feel the tension building between them. She didn't need to ask, she already knew. "They've found me," she whispered. Arlen's face tightened. He stood quickly, walking over to the cockpit window and staring out into the void. The silence that followed felt like it was pressing in from all sides. A strange weight in the air. But it wasn't just the sound of the ping that had changed. It was the feeling in the ship. Like they were no longer alone. Aurora stood up, her legs still weak, but she didn't hesitate. She moved forward, each step deliberate, slow but steady. "I'm done hiding," she said, voice quiet, but firm. Arlen turned around, his face pale, and his voice urgent. "We need to leave. Now." She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. "No. I'm done running." The ping came again, this time stronger. A low thrum that filled the room. The ship's sensors lit up. Arlen stared at the console, his hands tense, ready to move, but not sure what to do. "We won't outrun them," he said, his voice low. "They'll track us down." Aurora met his gaze, her expression unflinching. "I'm not running anymore. I'm going to face this." She stepped closer to the control panel, her fingers brushing the surface as she looked at the display. Outside, the ship was silent, but only for a moment. Then, the unmistakable shadow of a ship appeared on the sensors, a sleek, black reconnaissance vessel from Concordance. It was drawing closer, its form cutting through the dark like a predator searching for prey. Aurora felt no fear. Not anymore. She had been hunted before. But this time, she wasn't the prey. She was something else. Something different. Arlen watched the screen, his heart racing. "They'll be on us in minutes. We can't fight them." "I'm not afraid of them anymore," Aurora said, her voice cold. "They've been hunting me for too long. It ends now." The ship drew closer, the ping on the radar growing stronger. The beacon inside her brain wasn't just a signal. It was an invitation, an opening for whoever was out there to find her. She wasn't running. Not this time. Aurora turned to Arlen, her eyes locked onto his. "Start the defenses. I'm not hiding from them." Arlen hesitated, looking at her with a mixture of concern and respect. He nodded, quickly setting to work, but his eyes never left her. He had never seen this side of her before. The strength, it was raw, something he hadn't known she had until now. As the ship from Concordance closed in, the tension in the air grew thicker. The ping faded, but the message was clear: they had found her, and there would be no running this time. Aurora was ready. She had made her choice. And now, she was going to make them face her. Scene 6, The Stand, facing the Concordance. The silence in the ship was broken by a hum, soft at first, but growing louder. Aurora felt it before she heard it. The ship's sensors had detected something, and it was coming closer. She didn't need to look at the radar to know. The feeling in the air had changed. Tension hung like a cloud. Arlen, still sitting at the control panel, stiffened as the pinging sound echoed through the ship's systems. "They're here," he muttered, his voice tight. "Concordance." Aurora stood still, her body still not fully accustomed to the movements, but this time, she felt no hesitation. She was no longer going to hide. She wasn't going to run. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders, but it was a weight she welcomed. She turned to Arlen. "I'm done running." He shot her a glance, his expression mixed with worry and something else, respect. "Aurora, we can't fight them. They'll bring the whole fleet." "I'm not hiding anymore," she replied, her voice steady, as she took a slow, deliberate step toward the airlock. "I've been running my whole life. But not today." Outside, the Concordance soldiers were already making their move. The dropship touched down with a smooth almost mechanical precision. The door hissed open, and the soldiers emerged, clad in their black combat gear, moving with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Their leader stepped forward, the rest of the squad flanking him, weapons drawn and ready. Aurora didn't flinch. She didn't move to take cover. Instead, she stood her ground, looking directly at the soldiers. There was no fear in her eyes, just the cold clarity of someone who had made their choice. The squad leader raised his voice, issuing the first command. Aurora 1A, stand down and surrender immediately. You are to come with us. She didn't answer immediately. Her mind was working, connecting, calculating, reaching deep into the hidden parts of her that she hadn't yet learned to control. Her neural systems were still broken, but they were hers to command. They weren't going to force her to comply. Slowly, her eyes closed. The soldiers waited for her response, the tension thick in the air. And then it happened. Aurora didn't move her body. She didn't need to. The change was subtle, but it was there, an undercurrent of power running through her. The control over her neural system wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The leader's voice cut off mid-command. His hand jerked, the weapon in his grip malfunctioning. His squad's communication network went silent. Signals scrambled, lost in a haze of static. The soldiers' suits flickered, their visors darkened for a split second, and then blinked back on just long enough for them to realize something had gone wrong. Aurora opened her eyes. Her gaze locked with the squad leaders, steady and unflinching. You're not in control here anymore, she said, her voice calm, yet full of authority. The leader's face twisted with confusion, then anger. You think you can stop us? We'll just take you back. No, Aurora interrupted, her voice sharper this time. You won't? Without moving a muscle, she sent another signal into the system, tweaking the neural network that connected the soldiers' suits. One by one, their communication links failed, their weapons misfired, and their systems locked them out. They weren't incapacitated. They weren't killed. But they were disabled by her will, with nothing more than her mind. The leader stood frozen for a moment, staring at her, as if trying to process what had just happened. But there was nothing to process. She hadn't attacked. She hadn't lifted a finger. She had simply taken control of the systems that controlled them. The soldiers glanced at each other, confused, disoriented. One by one, they stepped back, unsure of what to do. Aurora's calm voice broke the silence. You don't need to fight me. Just leave. They didn't answer. They didn't have to. Slowly, they turned and began to retreat. No one fired a shot. No one tried to attack. They were defeated not by force, but by something much more powerful. Aurora had won, and she hadn't even touched the weapon. Arlen, who had been watching in stunned silence, walked over to her. He didn't say anything at first. He didn't need to. He could see it in her eyes. She wasn't just a weapon anymore. She was something else, something more. "You did it," he finally said. Aurora nodded once, but she didn't look at him. Her eyes were on the soldiers retreating, their steps slow and unsure. She had taken control of herself, of the situation, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she was the one calling the shots. "I didn't kill them," she said quietly. "But I made them see they couldn't control me anymore." The ship, Driftwake, glided through the emptiness of space, the hum of its engine vibrating through the hull like the heartbeat of a dying machine. The view outside the cockpit window was endless black, starless void with the faintest hint of distant galaxies shimmering far beyond their reach. The silence felt different here, not heavy, but peaceful. It was a quiet that offered a sense of space, a kind of vast freedom. As they neared the surface of the unknown moon, the atmosphere outside the ship shifted. The engine's hum grew softer, the stars finally coming into view through the thin haze of dust. Aurora and Arlen watched the planet below grow larger in their viewports, a barren world, but one with promise. A place to start over. They descended into a valley that seemed untouched by time. The ground was soft and smooth, the air crisp and clean, free of the usual metallic smell that had clung to the Driftwake for years. Here, everything was different. No scars of war, no remnants of civilization. Just an open, empty world. Aurora stepped out of the ship, feeling the cool ground beneath her bare feet. The air was fresher than she expected, like a scent she hadn't smelled in a lifetime, something alive and wild. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with something real. Arlen stood beside her, looking around. "This is it," he said, his voice steady but carrying a hint of something uncertain. Aurora glanced at him, then back at the wide open space. "It's beautiful," she said softly. For the first time, her words weren't filled with fear, but with something else, hope. They didn't speak for a while, just stood there together in the silence. Aurora could hear the faint rustle of wind, feel it against her skin. It was a strange sensation, she wasn't used to it. Her whole life had been about noise, about constant movement, about survival. But here, there was nothing but space and air. She could finally take her time. Over the next few days, they set to work, building a home. Not a home made from concrete or prefabricated panels, but one pieced together from the remnants of the Driftwake. It wasn't much, just a simple structure of scavenged metal, wire, and broken parts, but it was theirs. Arlen worked tirelessly, welding pieces together, his movements quick and practiced. Aurora watched him, learning how to use the tools, how to fix things. The mechanics of it weren't hard, just patience and precision. At first, she had to focus, using the strength she had left in her to steady her hands. But with each passing day, she grew more comfortable. The movements became second nature. She wasn't just learning to fix things, she was learning to live again. At the end of a long day of building, Arlen took out an old guitar, one he'd kept from before the war, battered but still functioning. He sat by the small campfire they'd built, strumming slowly. The sound was soft, rough at the edges, but it filled the night air like a warm blanket. Aurora sat down beside him, eyes wide with curiosity. She had never heard music like this before. It was simple, just the sound of strings, but it was also raw, real. She didn't understand it at first, but she let the notes wash over her. It was like hearing a part of herself she had never known existed. As he played, she closed her eyes, letting the music carry her away. It wasn't just the melody, it was the feeling, the human touch behind it. The slow rhythm of his fingers, the quietness of the night, the crackle of the fire between them. When he finished, Aurora opened her eyes, a soft smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I didn't know I could feel something like that," she said quietly, her voice still uncertain. Arlen smiled back at her, resting the guitar on his lap. "You're learning to live again. That's all." Aurora took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words sink in. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about being. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was choosing to live. No longer a tool. No longer a weapon. Just a person. And in this quiet valley, under a strange sky, Aurora knew that she could start again. The night sky above them stretched endlessly, dotted with stars that no longer seemed cold and distant. They weren't just markers in the void, they were alive, glowing softly above, like silent witnesses to a life reborn. The stars didn't feel like they were part of someone else's plan. For the first time, they just felt like stars. A quiet reminder that there was space, beyond war, beyond everything. Aurora sat beside Arlen, her hands resting on her knees, her gaze fixed on the vastness of the sky. The night air was crisp, the quiet felt like it was part of her. She wasn't just breathing, it was like she was beginning to belong to the world around her. The weight of her past seemed lighter here, as though the open sky had swallowed it all up. But still, something lingered in her mind. A question she had asked herself over and over. "Do I deserve freedom?" she whispered, almost to herself, staring at the endless horizon. "A person like me, who was made for something else, do I deserve to be free?" Arlen didn't hesitate. His voice was steady, sure, with no hint of doubt. "You're not what they made. You're what you choose." The words hung in the air between them, quiet but powerful. Aurora let them sink in. Choose. Not just a creation of someone else's will, but a being who could choose. She wasn't the thing they built her to be. She could choose who she wanted to be. Aurora didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. She just kept staring up at the stars, letting Arlen's words wash over her. The meaning of them was still settling deep in her chest, like something slowly unfolding in the dark. For the first time in her life, she wasn't bound by anyone else's expectations. She wasn't defined by the past, by the orders that had been given to her. She was free to choose whatever came next. She turned her head to look at him, her eyes finding his. There was something different in her gaze now, something new. The confusion, the fear gone. In its place, there was a quiet confidence. The kind that came from knowing she had made the choice to be more than just what she was made to be. Arlen met her eyes, and for a moment, they just sat there, side by side, in the soft glow of the starlight. No words were needed. The sky stretched above them, silent and infinite, and for the first time, Aurora felt like she could breathe into it. They weren't running anymore. They weren't hiding. They weren't just surviving. They were living. The stars above them twinkled softly, but it was the quiet in their hearts that spoke the loudest. And in that stillness, Aurora realized something she hadn't been able to see before. Freedom wasn't something someone could give you. It wasn't a gift. It was something you had to choose. And at that moment, Aurora chose. She wasn't made. She was chosen. As Aurora stands beneath the stars, her future no longer defined by what she was made to be, but by the choices she makes. She steps into a new life, one where she is free. No longer a weapon, no longer a tool, she is a person. The questions that once haunted her, the doubts that held her captive, have finally been answered. But as the stars above whisper secrets of the universe, one thing is certain, this is just the beginning. What lies ahead for Aurora? Is her journey truly over, or are there even greater challenges awaiting her in the vast, mysterious galaxy? Could the universe, with all its wonders and dangers, have more to teach her? The story of freedom, identity, and choice is just one of many hidden truths that we'll explore together in the future. But what do you think? Are we truly alone in the cosmos, or is there more out there waiting for us to uncover? What would you do if you had the power to choose your destiny? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more mind-bending tales that'll leave you questioning the very fabric of reality. Until next time, the universe is waiting, and there's always more to discover.